This story is a continuation of the story from the previous video, The Fisherman and the Genie. When King Yunan heard his words, he was astonished and said to him, "How will you do this? By God, if you cure me, I will enrich you and bestow so many blessings upon you that your wealth will reach your grandchildren. Whatever you wish for will be yours, and you will be my advisor and closest confidant. Truly, will you cure me of this ailment without medicine or ointment?" Sage Duban replied, "Yes, I will cure you without any hardship to your body." The king was exceedingly amazed and said, "O sage, when will this treatment take place, and on which days?" "Hurry, my son." Sage Duban replied, "I hear and obey." He then left the king's presence, rented a house, and placed his books, medicines, and herbs there. He prepared his remedies and fashioned a hollow polo stick, making a handle and a ball with his expertise. The next day he went up to the king, greeted him, and instructed him to go to the playing field and play with the ball and stick. The king was accompanied by his princes, guards, ministers, and state officials. When they were all gathered in the field, Sage Duban approached the king, handed him the stick, and said, "Take this stick, hold it like this, and walk in the field, hitting the ball with all your might until your hand and body sweat, allowing the medicine to penetrate from your hand into your entire body. Once you sweat and the medicine takes effect, return to your palace, enter the bath, bathe, and then sleep. You will be cured." King Yunan took the stick from the sage, held it in his hand, mounted his horse, threw the ball, and chased after it, striking it with force while gripping the handle of the stick. He continued hitting the ball until his hand and entire body sweated, and the medicine permeated his body from the stick's grip. Sage Duban knew that the medicine had spread through the king's body, so he instructed him to return to his palace and immediately enter the bath. The king returned at once, ordered the bath to be prepared for him, and everyone hurried to make the arrangements. The king bathed thoroughly, dressed inside the bath, exited, and returned to his palace to rest. Thus was the story of King Yunan. As for Sage Duban, he returned to his home and spent the night. The next morning he went to see the king, who granted him permission to enter. The sage greeted the king and recited these verses in his honor.
زهت الفصاحة إذا دعيت لها أبا، وإذا دعت يوما سواك لها أبا. يا صاحب الوجه الذي أنواره تمحو من الخضب الكريه غياهبا، ما زال وجهك مشرقا متهللا، فلا ترى وجه الزمان مقطبان. أو ليتني من فضلك المنان التي فعلت بنا فعل السحاب مع الربا، وصرفت جل الملا في طلب العلا، حتى بلغت من الزمان مآربا.
When he finished his poetry in praise of the king rose to his feet, embraced him, and seated him beside him, rejoicing. When the king left the bath, he looked at his body and found no trace of leprosy. His body was as clean as white silver. He was overjoyed and felt great relief and happiness. The next morning he entered the council, sat on his throne, and was joined by the state dignitaries and Sage Duban. When the king saw him, he hurried to him, seated him beside him, and ordered the tables to be set. They ate together, and the sage stayed with him all day. At night, the king gave the sage 2,000 dinars, along with clothes and gifts, and had him ride his horse back home. King Yunan marveled at his treatment, saying, "He cured me from outside my body without applying any ointment. By God, this is profound wisdom. I must reward and honor this man and keep him as a companion and confidant for life." The king spent the night in joy and happiness, grateful for his health and freedom from his ailment. When the king woke up and sat on his throne, his state officials stood before him, and the princes and ministers sat on his right and left. He then summoned Sage Duban, who entered, greeted him as usual, and was seated beside the king. They ate together, and the king honored and rewarded him. The conversation continued until nightfall, at which point the king ordered 5 robes and 1,000 dinars for Sage Duban, who returned home grateful to the king. The next morning, the king went to the council, surrounded by everyone. Among his ministers was one who was hideous in appearance, mean-spirited, stingy, and envious, accustomed to jealousy and malice. When this minister saw that the king had drawn Sage Duban close and bestowed such favors upon him, he envied him and harbored ill intentions. The minister approached King Yunan, greeted him and said, "O king of the age, you who are kind to all, I have a significant piece of advice for you. If I conceal it, I would not be worthy of your service. If you command me, I will reveal it." The king, disturbed by the minister's words, asked, "What is your advice?" The minister replied, "O great king, the ancients said that one who does not consider the consequences will perish. I see that the king has acted unwisely by favoring an enemy who wishes for the fall of his kingdom. You have honored and brought him close, and I fear for the king because of this." The king, annoyed and with a changed expression, asked, "Who do you claim is my enemy whom I have favored?" The minister replied, "O king, I am referring to Sage Duban." The king responded, "This man is my friend, the dearest to me, for he cured me of an ailment that had baffled the physicians. There is no one like him in this age. How can you speak of him this way? From this day forth I will grant him whatever he asks and send him 1,000 gold dinars each month, though even that is too little for him. I believe you speak out of jealousy. Do you want me to kill him and then regret it as Sinbad did after killing his falcon?" The minister asked, "How did that happen?" The king began to recount. It is said that there was a king among the Persian kings who loved to go hunting and hawking. He had a falcon he had reared, which never left his side, night or day. The falcon would stay perched on his arm all night, and when he went hunting, he took it with him. The falcon had a golden cup hanging from its neck, from which it drank.